Welcome everyone. Let's begin our lesson for today by going over our learning goals and success criteria. First, what are we learning? We're learning how to understand the vocabulary associated with irrational numbers and how to construct radical numbers on the real number line. How are we learning it? Through the reasoning with irrational numbers vocabulary flashcards and the reasoning with irrational numbers vocabulary quiz assignment, as well as the constructing irrational numbers on a number line notes and the constructing irrational numbers on a number line assignment. When can we use this information? To assist with the vocabulary and the lessons of this unit, and to cut boards into smaller equal pieces in order to create or repair furniture. How do we know we learned it? By getting a score of 4 on the reasoning with irrational numbers vocabulary quiz assignment and a 4 on the constructing irrational numbers on a number line assignment. Now let's take a look at our agenda for today. We will begin by going over our learning goals and success criteria. While we do that, you'll fill out your Get It Started. Once you've completed the Get It Started, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. Then we'll do our weekly raffle. After that, we'll go over the constructing irrational numbers on a number line notes. And then I'll give you time to complete the constructing irrational numbers on a number line assignment on Desmos. Once you've completed the assignment, we'll go over it together and answer any questions that you may have. At the end of class, we'll go back over our learning goals and success criteria while you fill out your before you go. Your homework for tonight is to complete the reasoning with irrational numbers vocabulary quiz, to continue working on the reasoning with irrational numbers study guide, and any incomplete assignments that you may have. Let's take a look now at constructing irrational numbers on a number line notes. The notes begin with our learning goals and success criteria. Now here's a video that shows you how to construct square root of 2 on the number line. Now, the hint that you need to know is we're going to think of square root of 2 as being square root of 1 plus 1. And if we create a right triangle with legs of square root of 1 and square root of 1, then the hypotenuse should be square root of 2. And we get there by using the Pythagorean theorem. So in this case, if we can make this side length square root of 1 and the other side length square root of 1, then the line that connects them would be square root of 2. So that's how we'll do this. So you can watch the video on how to complete that. Let's talk now about how to graph square roots on the real number line. This time we're going to talk about how to graph square root of 2 on the real number line. And what we should notice is we want to be able to create a right triangle, something like this, and make this the square root of 2. What we should notice is, in order to make this the square root of 2, if we want to use our special right triangles, this length here should be 1, and this length here should be 1, and if that's the case, then this length here should be the square root of 2. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create this length also to be 1 on this side, and then once wherever they intersect, that should be square root of 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to use where it says more tools. I'm going to click on perpendicular line because I need to make sure that I have a perfect right angle. So I'm going to click on this segment here, this line here, and notice it creates a perpendicular line, and I want it to go through 1, just like that. So we know that this length is 1. If I can make this length 1 also, then the distance from here to here should be square root of 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use the circle tool. And if I go from this point out to this point, that means that the radius from here to here is 1. And it's also from here to here is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point where they intersect, right there. So just like my drawing I made here, this segment was 1, this segment was 1, so this side here should be square root of 2. So if I connect 0 to this point here using a segment, then this should be square root of 2. Now, that's great that this is the square root of 2, but we need to bring that down to the number line. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a circle tool and go from this point to that point there, just like that. And wherever that circle now intersects, because it's still a radius of square root of 2, so this radius also is square root of 2. So wherever the circle intersects the number line should be square root of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point right there. And that point right there represents square root of 2. Now we can take a look at how to construct square root of 3 on the number line. Well, we should think of square root of 3 as being the square root of 1 plus 2. So we would have legs of square root of 1 and square root of 2, and then the hypotenuse would be square root of 3. So here's a video showing you how to do that one. Let's talk now about how to construct the square root of 3 on the real number line. So on this one, we're given 0 and 1, and we're also given square root of 2. So what we should notice is, using our right triangle, if we were to create a right triangle, we should notice that using the Pythagorean theorem, if we want this side here to be square root of 3, that's what we're trying to achieve. So we'll go ahead and put that in. So if we want that side to be square root of 3, then using the Pythagorean theorem, we know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So the only way to get 3 is 1 plus 2, right? So if we were to take the square roots of each of those, square root of 1 is 1. So one of these sides has to be 1. So we'll go ahead and make this side here 1. And this side here would then have to be the square root of 2, which is just square root of 2. So I'm going to put square root of 2. So in order to get a square root of 3, we have to have square root of 2 for one side and 1 for the other side. Well, luckily we already have square root of 2 here. So that length is square root of 2. So now if we can just make a right angle here and then make this length 1, then when we connect the dots, that should be square root of 3. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a perpendicular line. So I'm going to go to More Tools, and I want a perpendicular line. That'll give me a perfect right angle. So I click on this number line here, and I want it to go through square root of 2. So I click there. So there's my first part. Now I need to make this length here 1. So I'm going to make a segment that goes from 0 to 1. So now that I can use that as my radius. So I'm going to go to More Tools, Compass. I want this length here. So notice if I put it here at 0, it goes through 1. And I want that to go with the center at square root of 2, right there. So now I have my circle, and I know that the distance from here to here is 1. So I'm going to put a point where they intersect. So far I have my square root of 2 and my 1. Now that means that this length, according to my right triangle, should be square root of 3. So I'm going to use a segment tool to go from here to here. So this length here should be exactly square root of 3. Now from there I need to copy this down onto my number line. So I go to Circle and I click on this point here, and I want it to go through this point here. Notice the radius is square root of 3, so that means that in this direction the radius is also square root of 3. So wherever the circle and the number line intersect should be exactly square root of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point there, and that point represents square root of 3. Next we will take a look at how to construct square root of 5 on the number line. And we're going to think of square root of 5 as being square root of 1 plus 4. So we would have legs of square root of 1 and square root of 4. We could also have square root of 2 and square root of 3. Either one of those works. And here's a video that shows you how to do that. Let's talk now about how to construct square root of 5 on the real number line. So I'm going to look at this in terms of the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to draw my right triangle over here again. So I'm going to draw a right triangle. Just like that. And I know using the Pythagorean theorem, if I want this to be square root of 5, so I'm going to go ahead and label that as square root of 5. So if I want that side length to be square root of 5, these two sides, they have to add up to be 5. So that could be 4 and 1 or 2 and 3, right? Those are the ways we can get 5. So let's say that I wanted it to be 2 and 3. So if I do that, this side would be the square root of that, so square root of 2. And the other side would have to be the square root of 3, so which is just square root of 3. So I'm going to put in square root of 3. So I can make this side square root of 2 and this side square root of 3. That would give me 5. Or I can change that and use 4 and 1 and take the square roots of each of those. So the square root of 4 is just 2. And the square root of 1 is just 1. So what I could do now is I can make this 2 and 1, and then I don't even need these square roots. So either way works. I'm going to do 2 and 1 just because it's a little easier. So now all I need to do is find where 2 is. Well, if this distance is 1, then if I copy that distance over here, it would be 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the circle tool and go from 1 out to 0 here. So I have a radius of 1 here and a radius of 1 here. So this point here, where the circle and the number line intersect, that point should be exactly 2. So now I have my 2. Now I just need to copy this and make it be 1. So I'm going to use my segment tool here to connect this point and get my radius. Then I'm going to use the compass tool to copy it over here to 2. So just like that. So now, once I draw my perpendicular line, it should have an exact length of 1. So I'm going to go ahead and go to More Tools, Perpendicular Line. I want it to be perpendicular to the number line here. And I want it to pass through 2, right there. What we should notice is we have a length of 2 here, and this length, because we use the circle with the radius of 1, this length here should be 1. So we have 2 and 1. So that means the distance from this point to here should be exactly square root of 5. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point here, and I'm going to use a segment to connect them, right there. So there we go. Now this distance here should represent square root of 5. So now all I need to do is use my circle tool to go from this point out to this point there. And this has a radius of square root of 5. So therefore, when I go down to here, I also have a radius of square root of 5. So now all I need to do is put a point where they intersect right there. And that point right there should represent square root of 5. Now we'll take a look at how to construct 2 square root of 3 on the number line. And we're going to think of 2 square root of 3 as double square root of 3. So all we would need to do is find where square root of 3 is and then copy that distance. And here's a video that shows you how to do that. Let's talk now about how to scale a square root now. So right here we're supposed to construct 2 square root of 3. Well, we know where square root of 3 is. It's right here. So 2 square root of 3 would just be doubling that. So all we would need to do is we can draw a circle. We go from this point here and bring it all the way back to 0 so that we have a radius here of square root of 3. Well, if we go to the other side, this is also square root of 3. So that means that the distance from 0 to out here is 2 square root of 3 because it's doubled the square root of 3. So all we need to do is put a point here, and now we have constructed 2 square root of 3. Now let's take a look at how to construct negative square root of 2 on the number line. We'll construct it by constructing square root of 2 and then copying it to the other side of 0. And here's a video that shows you how to do that. Let's talk now about how to construct a negative square root on the real number line. So in this one we're going to create negative square root of 2. So nice thing is we've already constructed square root of 2. So from that now, if we can just copy it over to the other side, we'll have negative square root of 2. So what we're going to do is, we're going to use the circle tool. We're going to click on 0, and we're going to extend it all the way out to square root of 2, right there. And what we should notice is we have a radius of square root of 2, which means that on the other side we have a radius of square root of 2. So on this side, this would be negative square root of 2 right here. So all we need to do is put a point there, and that point should represent negative square root of 2. Now let's take a look at how to construct square root of 2 plus square root of 3. So we already have square root of 2 and square root of 3. So now we just need to add them to each other. So we would take the distance from 0 to square root of 2 and add it to the end of square root of 3. And wherever that is should be square root of 2 plus square root of 3. And here's a video that shows you how to do it. Let's talk now about how to add 2 square roots on the real number line. So in this one, we're going to add square root of 3 plus square root of 2. Well, what we should notice is we have a square root of 3 here and a square root of 2 here. So what we're going to do from there is we're going to go ahead and create a segment that goes from 0 to square root of 2. So that will give me a radius. Now, if I can copy this distance over to the other side of square root of 3 over here, then that should add them together. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and use the compass tool. So more tools, compass. I want this distance here. So that gives me square root of 2. And I want to add that to square root of 3. So now on this side here, I would have square root of 3 plus this distance here, because this is the radius is square root of 2. So this distance here will be square root of 2. So this is square root of 3 plus square root of 2. Now, if I wanted to subtract these and make it square root of 3 minus square root of 2, I would do the exact same thing. So I would take this distance and make this my center, but now minus square root of 2 would be over here. So if I put a point here, this would represent square root of 3 minus square root of 2. Let's talk now about how to sign in to Desmos to complete your work. So what we're going to do is you're going to click on the link to go to the assignment, and it should take you to a page that looks kind of like this. And right here where it says sign in with Google, we're going to click there. And it's going to pop up with our email accounts. You're going to click on your school email account, and it should already have you logged in because you should have already been logged in using Google Classroom. From there, I'm just going to click start the activity, and it will take me into the assignment and allow me to begin. So that's how you will log in to Desmos using Google. Let's take a look now at the constructing irrational numbers on a number line assignment. The assignment begins with our learning goals and success criteria. If we scroll down, there's a link that takes us to the Desmos activity. It should take us to a page that looks like this. We'll go ahead and click start the activity. The assignment begins with the learning goals and success criteria. We'll go ahead and click next. And now it gives us a number line and asks us to construct square root of 2. Now what we should notice is square root of 2, if we make that our hypotenuse, that's really the square root of 1 plus 1, right? So we can go ahead and treat this like the Pythagorean theorem. And if we make this a right triangle, then we would say that this side here needs to be 1. And this side here also needs to be 1, because 1 plus 1 is 2, right? And we take the square root of that, so this is what we want. So if I can copy this distance from here to here up to here, then I should have my perfect triangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a perpendicular line, and I want it to go from here and pass through 1. So that creates my right angle, which I have here. Now this side is 1. If I can make this side 1 also, then wherever this connects to this point on the circle, that's square root of 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use the circle tool and go with 1 as my center and go out to 0. Well, notice this is a radius, so that means that this is also a radius. So from here to here is also 1. So here's my 1 and 1. Now this distance should be square root of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a segment to connect those. So this segment here should be square root of 2. Now if I can just swing this down, wherever it crosses should be square root of 2 on the number line. So I'm going to use the circle tool and go with 0 as my center out through this point here, because again this is a radius. That means that this radius has to be the same, so this point here should represent square root of 2. So you'll continue to answer these questions just like this. So here's square root of 3, square root of 4, and so on. So you'll continue to answer these questions until you get to the end. If you need help with specific ones, there are videos in the notes that show you how to do several of these. So you'll go ahead and complete this until you get all the way to the end. Once you get to the end, we'll go back to our Google form and click next. This will send you to your before you go. Go ahead and fill out your before you go and then submit your work on Google Classroom.